On the front of our bulletin is an interesting picture. Very apropos for today, considering we had some snow this morning. It's a picture of a well, kind of a Western version, I would say. One that when I would say, think of a wishing well, or think of a well, you probably envision something like this. Probably without the snow, but it would look a little something like this. The image that most artists use are similar, of the round cement blocks with Jesus sitting beside the rocks with the Samaritan woman with her big jug. This is a beautiful picture. You can see that there's something special that the artist wanted to depict, something key, a key message that artist took out of this long, curvy, plodding prose. That's why I giggled when he laughed. This aura of divine light. Jesus is pointing to heaven. He's using his hands to show the pancreator sort of to the side. And this image that we use, or that John uses in our reading today, uses metaphor of living water and irony to glimpse at grace. A surprise. A man by a well who looks just like a man by a well. But surprise. Grace freely given. An invitation. Let's ground ourselves in the location, because I think it does make a difference. This is a picture of Palestine. On the top is Galilee, where Jesus spent the majority of his ministry time. Down below is Judea, where you see Jerusalem and Jericho, where Jesus is walking in our Lenten progress towards. This writing actually was said to have happened earlier on in his ministry, but they do take us through the wilderness, which is appropriate given our Lenten time with our desert and our rock. There's a sculpture here that I bought in Israel. It's a representation of the woman at the well. And that woman was supposed to have been located in Sujar, which is right there in the middle. It would have been considered a non-Jewish location that Jesus would have walked through. It might have been, to John, considered the world. Jesus leaving his comfort and going out to a different place to show his love to the world. We heard a beautiful rendition of God so loved the world in the choir song just before now. This is just another map of Phoenicia, Galilee, Samaria, and Judea, and all the key points that Jesus hit, all these locations during his ministry. The neat thing about Jesus encountering a woman in this place is that he is showing his willingness to associate with people in the infancy of their faith. Jesus models a way of being, a way of welcoming newcomers. And appropriately today we have Brenda and Bob reaffirming their faith and joining as members of Grace United Church. It echoes Jesus' welcome. Now, people might have, associating with Jesus, thought of that Samaritan sort of as maybe a nobody, somebody not to associate with, somebody who had a past, somebody who had a questionable past. But Jesus said, I will treat her like a somebody. And by treating her like a somebody, she became an apostle. willing to engage outsiders. But it's risky, and it's awfully scary. Grace's community engagement is not less so through our vision that we try to live out. Reaching out publicly in a way that we think in all of our churches that we have the power to decide who's in and who's out. That's just an illusion. Jesus, in this story, teaches us there is no outsider, and we don't get to choose. Jesus already welcomes. And the wonderful thing is that we can accept that acceptance. Isn't that great? We don't have to do anything. We can just accept that acceptance gratefully. Now, the reading from Romans is a little bit more difficult. It's not a narrative story that we can kind of follow logically. But it is at its core about relationships. Through Christ, Paul says, God is revealed and God's divine love is revealed. Through faith, we understand perfection is not necessary for us to be loved by God. In relationship with God, we are loved, not because of our efforts, but because of God's loving action. And through that, we may discover peace and hope and perseverance, even through suffering. I don't know if you feel uneasy, though, when I read texts like this. And when I hear theology expressed, even in amazingly beautiful hymns sung by our choir. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. That part makes me uncomfortable. If we think of God as divine and God as Christ, though, it's not about sacrificing your child. It's about giving of yourself before thinking, giving of yourself to others before thinking solely of yourself. The other thing that I know I have to sort of work that out in my head, we all need to kind of struggle with theology, and Paul is always brings some of this stuff up for me. But also, he lays out a linear argument that seems linear. That if you're faithful and accepting that you can move through suffering. But unfortunately, faith does not always protect us from suffering. And doing our best to be faithful before God, some people think that that would protect us from the sufferings of the world. But if we think this, then when we encounter suffering, there is a risk of the abandonment of faith when the going gets tough. So it is often as well the effort to live a faithful life that can get us in trouble. It's risky. Suffering might come with a struggle for justice, for instance. Suffering can create a challenge to faith. And for some people, a loss of faith does happen. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says, it's really important not to jump like Paul does, so fast, through this linear, what it seems like a linear process, but sometimes it's just to sit with the suffering. And that, in itself, is important to us as as responding to the world. The wonderful thing, though, that our scriptures say is that despite this messy and unpredictable life, God's love and grace is freely and automatically given. That friendship is extended. And so, despite our suffering, there is a hope for life everlasting. In this, Jesus exposes himself as I am to the Samaritan woman. I am. Does it sound like the burning bush where Moses was exposed to the revelation of God? God also says in Jesus that in this discussion that in Samaria there is a large mountain in this region. And the Samaritans in this place believed that God reveals God's self on this mountain. And they had an argument with the people of Jerusalem who believed that God reveals God's self in the temple in Jerusalem. So she tries to engage Jesus in this argument. And Jesus says, no, it's not about a location or a temple. It's not about literal understanding of water. It's not about a dwelling place for God. It's meant to be a place where we can move to a different level of understanding. God as a tabernacle within us. So thinking about a well a little differently. When I did travel, this is the type of well that Jesus would have experienced. Not a neat and tidy, westernized version of a wishing well, but a hole in the ground. One that's pretty risky to enter into to gather water. This is not actually Suhar, but it is a place called Hazor in northern Palestine in Israel. And it's a tell. Tells are big mountains that have layers and layers of civilization buried over thousands and thousands of years. And this is an archaeological dig that we visited. And to the right of the archaeological dig is a well. And we experienced this on the first day of our travels. This is a vision of it that I took from the top. And our guide said, there's an invitation to you to travel down 40 meters into the earth to go see the water at the bottom. And I thought, ooh, I'm not sure I want to go into that deep, dark well. A number of people on our trip just couldn't. And as I was walking down, my knees started aching. And I thought, what was I doing? I have to walk up this thing in the hot desert. This is a picture. It's okay, Stephen. It is actually a picture. That's a picture of the water when we got down to the bottom. And people got really angry with everybody because people kept taking pictures with flashes. And we'd be all blinded. And so by the time I got there, they said, please, just take the picture without the flash. So it tells you how dark it was at the bottom of that staircase. So we started to walk up. And I thought, this is a real effort. It's not easy to live out going for this water. It's not just a matter of going and having your water bucket. No. It's a journey. And as I was heading up towards the light, it started to get brighter. And I started feeling a little more relieved. But that I had encountered and made an effort, and the water was revealed to me. And just as I stepped on the steps where the archway, where they tried to protect people so that you didn't slip down those real steps that are on either side, a bird jumped up and scared me, and I nearly toppled down the stairs, and it flew up out of the well. And I was sort of blinded looking up into the light, and I said, why did that happen? And I looked down and discovered a surprise. A surprise of hope, of an egg with life being prepared to be opened. And the depth of this reading broke open to me again, with the potential to enter into life, to express, come, see. I saw something amazing. Could it be the Messiah? Even though I don't understand theologically all the time what Paul means. Sometimes when I'm squirmish and don't know if I quite agree with what's happening in the Bible, there's this egg of opportunity in the sharing of our faith, in the welcoming of the outsider and of the newcomer. As our hymn says, so that everyone who believes may not perish, but have eternal life. Oh well. When I was preparing for this sermon today, on the World Day of Prayer service, it was the same reading that evening. And June asked me as she was walking, are you going to give the same sermon that you gave a couple weeks ago? And I said to her, I said, you know what? The wonderful thing about this reading is every time you reach in to gather water from it, it opens up a brand new spring of ideas. And so one of our people in our resources said, it's a text that every minister should preach on at least once a year, because it allows us to drink from that poured living water again and again. At the back of our bulletin, there's a beautiful prayer of approach. On this Lenten road, you offer us your presence in soft shadowed snow, in light lifted branches, in the well of living water, out of sight. You are with us on this journey, and we gather today to be reminded, to drink again of grace, and I would add, to be responsive, to say, come and see, within the radical, friendly invitation we live